I'm Steve Vibronics, and this is the Life in Dub podcast, talking to people who live their lives in dub and reggae. Episode number 31. Welcome to the 31st episode of the Life in Dub podcast. I hope you're all doing okay out there. Thanks again for tuning in to Life in Dub, and welcome to anyone tuning in for the first time. This is the podcast that digs deep into reggae and dub history, delivering in-depth interviews with people who live their lives through music. Don't forget, there are 30 previous episodes to check out at lifeindub.com or wherever you listen to your podcasts. If you've got any questions or just want to say hi, you can email me at vibronics@gmail.com. It's great to hear what you think about the podcast. This week, I want to talk about, well, actually nothing. You see, this week, the episode is much longer than usual, so I don't want to take up any more of your valuable time. But don't worry, my theories and opinions on all things reggae and sound system will return next time. This week, my guest is Mad Professor. We've been planning this interview since the start of the podcast series, so it's great to finally get to talk about his life in dub. With a legend like Mad Professor, it's just not possible to get a whole life story. We'd literally be talking for days. But what we do get is some amazing insight into when he started out, the barriers he encountered, and the struggles he overcame at the start of an incredible career. A career that continues right up to this day. So enough of me, let's get on with the interview. Well, Mad Professor, welcome to the Life in Dub podcast.
Okay, thank you.
Nice. Glad you could join me. It's great to see through the video there some shots of where we were, like the legendary studio. And what I do at the start of the podcast is I ask everyone the same question. And that's a question about, it's just a way to kind of kickstart the thing and start talking about music. And just to name a track that was really influential. You look back and you think, you know what, that track really influenced me or changed something for me. Or I don't know if you've got an example of a track like that you can think of.
Yes, You Are Everything by the Stylistics.
Okay. And what makes you mention that track?
Because it's a track where the skill of the engineer made an indelible stamp on the sound of the song of the hit. You know, it's like a brilliant bit of engineering, and the use of the phaser is just a brilliant song. Good example of 1970 as a landmark where, you know, engineering came into influencing like songs, whether they hit or miss, you know.
Where would you have heard that, do you think?
It was big hit. It was everywhere. I mean, I was a schoolboy. I was just listening to stuff, and that woke me up. That made me want to get more into engineering and subsequently into production.
Because of the sound of it.
It just told you that you could do a lot with recordings if you had the time. And if you really got into the technology.
Well, whilst we're talking about that, because like I say to the people I've interviewed who've just got such a long career, it's so hard to kind of take everything in. But whilst talking about that and saying that you got interested in music and production, like how did you start to get involved in music?
It depends on where you want to start. Whether you want to start with what was in my mind, or when I started to actually attempt to become a professional, you know? I mean, I don't know.
Well, I'm interested in how you started at the beginning. Like, what made you want to start in music, and what? Because it's not a career for everyone.
No, many have tried. I mean, I personally, when I started, there wasn't. I mean, put it this way: a telephone was magic, a light bulb was magic, a radio was big magic, because that's what the 60s was like. Coming from the 50s, that's what. So it's hard for you or anyone of a digital age to even imagine the effect of a radio in your front room, playing music with people jumping around and dancing. You cannot imagine the effect because we had nothing else.
Yeah, and before the radio, there was nothing like it, I guess, to have music piped into your house.
Nothing like that. When you hear it, you'd hear it very likely on medium wave. It wasn't even FM.
Mm-hmm.
And if you got an experience in radiology, you'd know medium wave is noisy. It's a constant static.
Mm-hmm.
And then as you tune in, you hear the music or you hear the talking. Medium wave is what they call AM, amplitude modulation. So as it goes up, you could hear it better.
So how did you learn about all this stuff? Because it's so like...
Well, I taught myself. When I was small, as we go back to that period, we had the two technical things in our house was a radiogram, which my mom had a few collections of shellac and 33 and 78 RPMs. And she would have like Jim Reeves and Nat King Cole and this kind of, church songs.
Mm-hmm.
And she would get it out either at 5, 6 in the morning and play Jim Reeves like, we thank you every day. We thank you every day. We thank you. And then she said, Neil, come on, go get dressed. We're going to go to church. And she would play that in the morning. So I gradually got into tampering because I was curious. Because I kept asking, where's the man in the radio? Where's the song coming from? I was curious. How is that song coming out? That's magic. And one day when she went out, a gold screwdriver went behind the radio. When I looked in, I saw what I learned to be later, resistors, capacitors, condensers, diodes, and even a couple of tubes giving off some heat. And I thought, this don't make sense. I want to know about this. And it started there. She came in, I got some licks.
For messing with the radio.
Yeah. And from then, she sent me to the library. I got some books. And I basically taught myself electronics. I learned about reading circuit diagrams. I learned about reading about color codes.
Mm-hmm.
I learned how a simple amplifier worked, how a simple radio worked. And I basically built my first radio by the age of 10.
And was there a particular book or was there a whole load of books?
Several books.
Mm-hmm.
Several books. Because electronics was the magic. It's like digital technology is now. It's a magic. And you're either curious about it or you're not.
And what about the actual music? Were you drawn to the music, to the sounds of the music as well? Is that because obviously everyone knows you as a music producer? And
well, I didn't like a lot. I didn't really like the Jim Reeves stuff and the Nat King Cole stuff. I thought, this is boring. When it got a little bit more jazzy with like Motown. I love the Motown stuff. I love
me too.
The Supremes, Baby Love, and I heard all that early stuff, and then coming down into the 60s, I really got into it. The early reggae things like Jamaica Ska, the independence song,
mm-hmm.
because even though I was in Guyana, we all tuned into the stuff from Jamaica. Jamaica had like, if anyone in the Caribbean wanted to do anything with music, they would go to Jamaica. And Jamaica had a couple of very, 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 very good studios.
Mm-hmm.
federal and dynamic. So the music I was listening to was very early reggae. You what you call it, Delroy Wilson, people like Boris Gardner, Lynn Tate, and the Jets. I mean, Maytals was one of the first.
How was it coming to UK? Because obviously UK quite different to Guyana, I imagine. And
to be honest, even when I was in Guyana, there was some UK music like the Beatles and the Yardbirds and Rolling Stones, but we never listened to that kind of music. We consider that to be head top pop music. And because Caribbean was really reggae and calypso, Mighty Sparrow, Kitchener, Maytals, Hopeton Lewis, Delroy Wilson. That's Caribbean. Then we hear, because the people who control the radios in the Caribbean, people like Radio Fusion or Ready Fun, they would beam into us what was popular in the UK. And by then the UK was going through its own kind of struggles with wanting to play things on like Radio Caroline, because that's how the first pirates in England started, because the BBC, what do they call it? They weren't really broadcasting music for kids. They were they were broadcasting music. It's similar to what's going on now. They broadcast what they think people should hear. And unfortunately, that always only cover a section of the population, and another section miss out. So the UK had their own struggles. By the time I got here, we had our own struggles. The black youth in England, in London, had their own struggles. We couldn't get our stuff heard. We wanted to hear things like Mighty Sparrow and Lord Creator and Phyllis Dillon. We wanted to hear music that we thought was special. Clancy Eccles, Prince Buster. We couldn't hear that. Definitely couldn't hear it on the radio. Every now and again, something would get played, like the My Boy Lollipop hitting. Desmond Decker was already hitting in the Caribbean when I left. When I left Guyana, Desmond Decker was hitting with like Itmek, and so by the time I got here, he had a hit with like some of that stuff, and then you had Young, Gifted and Black, going up the pop charts, 1970,
And what about going out to hear music when you were young here? Did you go to dances or shows?
As a young teenager, you had to go to, you had certain song systems playing in some halls around Brixton and like Stockwell and things.
Did you go to any of these dances?
Oh yeah. You go to. That's the only place you hear music. Other than that, you go to a record shop. There are a couple of record shops around that had like.
Are there any sound systems you remember being particularly kind of impressive or important or memorable, like from those early days when you were young?
Yeah, you had Juke Creed, you had Matador, you had Songs Organization, you had like Danny King, Neville King, yeah, man, they're all they're the top songs, man.
What were the dances like?
Full of black people, mainly black men. There weren't much girls in the dance. Full. And there weren't any white people in the dances. None. It was total West Indian, Caribbean affair. 100%. And big boxes and,
So what kind of sound? I mean, if you had to sort of describe the sounds to people of like what it sounded like,
the
those
song
dances.
in the late 60s, early 70s, nice and loud. Loud, probably distorted to some extent. I mean, I got into it because that's where like most of the guys went. Most of the people my age and that's where we got our culture. Because don't forget, most of us, we weren't even born here. We weren't born in England. It's like, yeah, we want to eat Caribbean food, eat West Indian food. We want to listen to music. You want to take part in the culture, you couldn't. You had no black food shops, nothing like that.
Did you ever think of starting a sound or getting involved in sound system yourself from seeing these sounds and going to these dances?
No, I never want to start a something. No, I thought I'd build amplifiers, and I built amplifiers for several people. I've built front-end mixers, but I never thought of doing it myself,
Because it almost seems like a logical thing if you like the music and you're electrical engineer and like those skills are needed, but you never felt drawn to like building a sound.
No, man. I mean, I had friends with sound systems, and I supported that, and I built equipment. I'd make sure it worked okay, but I didn't really see fit, and up to now, it's a question people ask me from time to time, but I don't, I don't really like to do what everybody else like. I like to think out of the box. I mean, I was more curious as to why no one was building studios, because I thought at that time a studio would have been ideal. But then I'm coming from a more technical point.
When did you first go into a studio or kind of witness a recording studio? Because I remember my first time, and it was just, I've said it many times on this podcast, it's like, there was no going back after that.
I mean, there weren't that many studios. They're either faceless, like in Tooting around the corner from where we lived, there was TMC that did a lot of reggae stuff, like people would come over here and like guys would record at TMC, and that was like a big studio upstairs. But I mean, I only got as far as the door.
Yeah, they weren't public places, were they?
No, and the thing is, a lot of time with studios, you didn't really, you didn't know there were studios. You could, I mean, it's a bit similar to here. Even today, some guys came here and they said, we've passed by this building hundreds of times and never imagined all this exists. Studios normally, they're quite low profile temples. They're not advertising for people from the public to come in and make a record, So you wouldn't know, and in fact, some big and famous studios, you could walk past them and you wouldn't know.
Yes, true.
So my first session, anything near to session, was when I went with like Black Fools, and that was like soon after I'd started building my desk and my studio. I went to Gooseberry because Gooseberry was like the hottest studio in town, and that was like a 16-track 2-inch in the West End, down a basement, and Dennis Bovell was in session, and he had like a desk, similar circuit to what I was building. So it was particularly interesting to see how he configured the desk, and he was like, and it was sounding solid, and
Yeah, it must have been, if you were interested in how music and how sound was recorded, to go to the studios and see Dennis Bovell working on music?
Oh yeah. And the thing is, I knew Dennis, not very well, but I knew him before that because his wife and my wife went to the same school, right? And like her sister was best friends with my wife. So I went by their place a couple of times and see him with a tape machine, and he was like trying to edit, and that kind of stirred up my curiosity about how quarter-inch machines work, and so yeah. That's probably the first kind of session that I went to.
To make the leap from setting up your studio and kind of from having a hunger to do it and doing it is like, it's a bit of a journey, really, isn't it? And you got to learn like loads of stuff to kind of put together even a basic studio.
I think to start a studio, then you had to have some kind of electronic
I agree.
knowledge. Yeah. And because your records would either sound fuck up or your records would sound good. It's 1,001 things that you should learn, even at this stage. And if you get it right, you could make wonderful, beautiful recordings.
Well, speaking of these wonderful, beautiful recordings, I mean, when did you start actually having a studio that you can record in and mix in, and you've got a finished kind of master tape? I mean, what was that first, like, a Rewa studio?
Well, some people would say that I still haven't started because, but when I thought I could switch on, I think it's when I had 8 channels in my desk, because I built the frame. I built the frame first, and it was a module frame. Then I built every channel, and I put it together. So when I had 8, and I bought a drum kit, and I bought a piano, and I built the reverb, and I built a delay, and we started to put some stuff down. I played a bit of guitar, then I played a bit of bass, and yeah, it was. I mean, I had a few microphones, and then I put it down. But yeah, it was a lot of learning about the mixing desk. I mean, thinking back about it now, it was crazy times, because I really didn't know what I was doing, because I never worked in a studio.
It's a lot of investment as well. I mean, to get even a basic studio, like, there's kind of sacrifices you have to make to kind of get that equipment.
To get the front room, when your wife and your wife's mother wanted the front room to
live normally in, I guess.
yeah, they wanted a normal front room. My lady, she was quite supportive. She, I mean, in fact, she gave me the money to buy the first tape machine. That was like 4-track and quarter-inch, and then I went down and I put down the stuff, and then I got a drummer in, and then the next week, I mean, it used to be mainly weekends. The next week I got a drummer and a bass player and a piano player, and then I would start messing them up. In fact, I've just put together an album from a lot of those sessions.
Okay.
An album which is called 40 Years of Dub, part 2, and it's called The First Dubs Are the Deepest,
And so did that stuff see the light of day back in the day, the stuff that you...
Never.
No.
Never. Only just now. 2 days ago. So you got good timing with this interview.
Cool.
Because 2 days ago, it's just been out, and it's going to be on vinyl.
Nice.
And it's going to be on digital. I don't know. It might end up on CD as well, too.
And why didn't that come out at the time? Did you feel it wasn't good enough or ready, or there weren't opportunities to put it out? Why didn't that come out then?
Oh, there was no interest. I mean, who's interested in some guy in South London, putting together some stuff? And in a sense, I wasn't really I mean, I didn't have the fan base.
Mm-hmm.
At that time there was no interest. Math professor Neil Fraser. Who the fuck is that about?
Everybody's a nobody to start with.
That's it. No interest. Nobody was interested.
But at some point, a record came out, and so how did that? How did you move from that? Like, there's no interest. You've got this basic studio to like, actually, this music's now out on the street.
Well, persistent. You'd have to read my book. I've just, more or less just written that chapter, how I moved from, it's a few chapters.
I bet.
And it's a long story.
Because it's a jump, isn't it? It's a jump to make that kind of messing around to like doing it.
Nothing was released from the 4-track days. I didn't start releasing stuff until the 8-track days. And the 8-track days, I got better musicians as well. And then I met, in fact, if you got time, I'll tell you the story. It's the longest story, but I'll tell you.
I'm interested.
Because it's important. I rewired my house because we'd bought this house and the house needed rewiring, right? So, and the guy who rewired, one of the guys who rewired and helped me redecorate the house, was a guitarist, Jim, right? And Jim said he was playing in a band on the Saturday. And if I wanted to come, he was playing in Brixton with a band, guitar. And if I wanted to come down, and I said, yeah, I'll come down. So I went with Jim to hear this band play. Band sounded nice, and I was getting excited. And when band finished play, it was at the George Cannon pub, which, for those who are familiar with South London, would know it now as Hootenanny, right? The guys in the band said, we're going to blues, we're going to party in Stockwell up the road. Would you want to come? So I said, yeah, man. They said, oh, you could come if you give our young brother a lift. The young brother, who was Pepper, Sergeant Pepper, Garnet Cross, he and his mates jumped in my car, my little Datsun Cherry, and I stick in my cassette, which is some stuff that I just recorded, right? And they hear the rhythm and they start MCing. Sergeant Pepper on the right front, yeah. And they said, shit, these rhythms bad. They said, yeah, and they're all excited. They said, you've got studio. So I said, yeah, I just built a studio and just recorded these tracks. So, and they're like, and they're like, could we come and record? It was music to my ears because, I'm thinking, boy, people are interested in what I'm doing. And I said, yeah, man. So we went to the party, and after the party, they said, Monday, and I gave them the address. They came down Monday after school, because they're all schoolboys. They're all 14, 13, 14. And they like, put on the tape. And it's the first time I start to voice and people, and I'm pleased because now I've got some MCs and some singers. And then Pepper said, boy, he's got a nice song for it. And if he could get his sister to come and sing. So I said, who's his sister? I said, Sandra Cross from Love and Unity. She sings with this group Love and Unity, and they had some record out. I didn't really know, with Studio 16, And next thing I know, she came and she did 2 harmonies on the tune. And, you know, I thought, shit, these people are talented. And I thought, let me release this record first. The next record I had in mind to release, because my aunt had a good friend named Yvonne, and one of Yvonne's daughters was singing, Deborah. And she was Deborah Glasgow. And I'd recorded a couple of tracks for Deborah. So Sgt. Pepper come back again with Sandra Cross and harmonies. That was like number 1. That was supposed to be Arriva 001. And I went to the pressing plant, I think January 29th, 1981. Yeah, I saw it. I just saw the invoice the other day from the pressing plant. Pressed 1,000. The guy who was representing me, a guy named Dennis, he had a local shop, and I'd actually named the shop for them. I named the shop Black Star Liner for them, right? Shop in Croydon. Reggae business was a business wherein you had to know somebody to get it. Mm-hmm. If you don't know nobody, you can't get it. And it was a very aggressive business as well, you know.
In terms of competition and stuff.
No, not really. It was just a closed shop business where a man would just see and throw a punch at you or tell you fuck off. What are you looking at? You know, it was a very tense. London itself was tense, and reggae London was tense and aggressive. There's no doubt about it. And it was a very Jamaican business. And if you weren't Jamaican, you had to either be tough.
So there's you, a new guy.
Yeah, I'm a new guy. I don't know nobody. I barely know anybody. I'm not Jamaican, and I had to get my way in. So it was not easy, but you know, I held my, you know. And they went Jetstar, and then a week later he came back to me and he said, "Boy, the tune moving, you know." Mm-hmm. So I said, "Good." He said, "If I were you, the tune moving, you don't want to be caught with a hit and you sell out the tune." So he said, "You better order some more from the press." So I said, "All right." I call up the press. Now, at the pressing plant was this typical racist Cockney white man named Bill. All right? Bill was blunt. In fact, when I first went there to press the records, the first thing he showed me on the shelf behind him, all them is bounce checks. And I've seen your kind before in here. And I've had enough bounce checks. So if you want records, you pay for them before. I said, fine. And I paid for them. So by the time I came to order the second record, he started to build up a trust in me a little. And he said, okay, I'm going to press these records. So he ordered them on the Thursday. On the Monday, Dennis called me back. And he said, Neil, you ordered the records? I said, yeah. He said, no, cancel it. Cancel the order. I said, why? He said, well, Jetstar, the records didn't really sell out, but they moved some of it from one pile to somewhere else. So when he thought the record had sold, records hadn't sold. The records they were just in a different place. So I called Bill and said, cancel the order. They said, Mr. Awira, just in time. Your records just come off the press.
Oh, man.
He said, you could come pick them up tomorrow. Bring the money with you. So I called Dennis. I said, hey, Dennis, man, you fucked me up, man, because I've got the press. I've got to pick up the records. Then they said, Chama, listen, it's more than one pressing plant around here. Just leave them with the records and go somewhere else. So I said, nah, Dennis, I can't do that. I said, I cannot do that. He said, so you do, you're going to pay an extra £500? I said, yeah, I have to do that. Boy, you're stupid, man. You can't do that. Just leave, man. You have an express in Slough, Lingerphone. You could go up Lingerphone and press. Or you could go East London, or Lake and press. I said, no. So I find the money. I went, paid bill, and I took the records out, took them up, took them in my loft, because after a few weeks they were just blocking up the passage. And by then people started to use the studio. By then I'm broke. Okay, £500 in 1981 was
you could probably buy a house in Leicester for that. You know? I mean,
very likely, because things were tough. And I was stunned. I was broke. And Sgt. Pepper was not a hit. It didn't get much airplay. I remember phoning Rodigan a few times because he just started. He was just on Capital Radio. And Tony Williams was on Radio London saying, hey, man, why don't play my record? Rodigan came on. First, it was hard to get him. Didn't come back to me straight. I said, look, I just built a studio. That's my first recording. Studio's in my house at the back of the kitchen. He said, yeah, I've got it. He said, songs like it. Songs like it was made in the kitchen. I said, yeah, man. He said, I can't play that. He said, that's terrible. That's one of the worst records I've heard. He said, man, sorry, I can't play that. Don't leave your day job. The competition, and in a sense, he was right. The competition out there, because I had to compete with Waiting in Vain, right? I had to compete with Money in My Pocket. I had to compete
big hits
with Sitting and Watching. I had to compete with the cream of the crop, because you have to remember, 79, 80, music sounds good. All those records were recorded in proper studios. Channel 1 was just moving from 4-track to 16-track. Joe Gibbs was well-tuned up studio. Harry J, they were all proper studios with engineers with experience, singing good.
And you're in your kitchen in South London.
A non-experienced engineer making a record and giving it to DJs to play. It stood no chance. And I licked my wounds and went back to my studio. When I went back to my studio, by then, Deborah Glasgow was supposed to come out. She done the voicing for the next record that's supposed to be Ariwa 002. I don't want nobody in the world messing around with my thing. By then, I'm broke. Baby just born, my first child. So I'm getting some pressure from my wife about money. You got a mortgage to pay. Because I used to work for Songcraft. By then I left.
People,
because I pick up a lot of audio knowledge from work with Songcraft, how to test things. By then I left and I started a studio, and things were tight.
Well, people have no idea like how hard it is at the beginning, I think, and those disappointments will be enough to stop a lot of people. So you've invested all this money and time to make a record that someone's told you is no good. It's like that's enough to stop a lot of people in their tracks.
Oh, and I'm sure it did. I'm sure it did stop a lot of people, and it stopped me for a little while. It stopped me enough to make me go back into the studio. I'm very analytical, and I analyzed where I went wrong. And I realized that, boy, you know what, Rodigan right, The record wasn't good enough to match up against Bob Marley and Dennis Brown. It simply wasn't good enough. And I realized you have to become as good or better. And then I came back to the business.
What was the first tune you put out that really made an impact and made you notice, like, wow, people are buying this, I've got to repress it, it's all happening?
Young Girl. Young Girl by Black Folds, one of the first groups that I worked with. They wouldn't come and record when it was 4-track. They thought, not going to record there. They didn't come and record when it was 8-track either. When I had 16-track, they got in, they came in, and they recorded 16-track. And they brought in Tony Benjamin, reggae regulars. Some other people who were fundamentally the first Ariwa artists, people like, unseen, people like Rockaway, who then disappeared, locked up. I didn't see Pepper for a while because he got locked away as well. That's the thing at that time. A lot of guys got locked away.
Mm-hmm.
There were police and black youth relationship was beginning to impact even on music and the artists then. So I recorded Family Love. I must have been more confident because what did I press? I can't remember.
That was a different story at Jetstar then.
Yeah, man. And I was dealing with them direct. I said, no more Dennis and his antics. And I went back. And Jetstar came back and he ordered some more, and then he ordered some more. And that's when I realized, it is possible to get a record to sell. And it ended up selling like a couple of thousand, which is good for a man.
Yeah, definitely. It starts to generate a bit of money and then there's a couple of thousand records out there. So, people are listening to it and talking about it. And
it got played. And it got played by Rodigan. It got played by Williams. Got played by Rachel London. And I thought, great. And I started to work with Tony Benjamin a lot more. He is like, with experience from reggae regulars, and he came in, he brought in regulars to play because he thought, right, this studio sounded good, the machine sounded good, and then, we could make records, and other people started to come in and rent the studio, I had a guy, a friend of mine, Benjamin, he became a good friend of mine. He started to come in. He brought in people like Zabandis. He brought in Desmond Decker. Desmond Decker brought Laurel Latkin in.
Then Leicester resident.
Yeah, Laurel used to come in. He nice guy, man. Then I had Benjamin told Shaka, he knew Shaka. Shaka called up one day. Shaka said, "You want to come down?" And Shaka came down. By then, I definitely went full time again, And Shaka had some old 1-inch tapes that he brought in. We put on the 1-inch and he recorded, what's his name, Junior Brown. And at that time, the studio was basically like a week in hand. Then I had.
So is that the Warriors track or Junior Brown?
Yeah, Warriors. Yeah,
that's such a great track.
Yeah, we record Warriors. We record a few other tunes from Junior Brown.
And was there like a difference? Because obviously you've got this like a kind of like lovers rock, love songs or whatever, and then you've got like Warriors, like Junior Brown. It's quite a different kind of track. So did you? I know that one came out on the Shaka label, but like. Were you trying to hit like different markets and stuff, or was it all just like just a reggae? I mean, how did it work? Because they're quite different, aren't they?
Well, for most people in England, even running labels, always pigeonhole themselves. I never. From day one, I never. Okay. If you listen to that Young Girl track on the B side, there was, I think, Swapper's March song or some heavy bass line. True. I mean, to me, there was never that much difference. I mean, the studio was running, and by that time, I had a lot of white guys coming into studio. That's the thing. I had
to do what? Just rent the studio as a commercial studio?
Yeah.
To record like what? Rock music and
rock
kind of
music,
anything.
pop music. I had the Ruts DC. I had guys from the Boomtown Rats. I had all kinds of people coming in to use the studio. And it was getting so busy, it annoyed the neighbors.
So it's still in your house at this point?
Yeah, still in my house. The neighbor complained to the authorities that there's a guy running a business and keeping noise and while he wanted to sleep and all that, I had to move. So I found a nice studio in Balham near the station. Nice place. And I was about to move in. The lady was picking up so much. I thought, you're going to outgrow that place in no time. And I thought, nah, let me look for another place. I found a place in Peckham. This place was like 4-story. I love the basement because since going to Gooseberry, basement studio would be ideal. And I went into the basement. Me and like some of the guys from Regulars and Dave, we all soundproofed the studio and we moved into Peckham. Because by then we started to do various singles that were hitting. We recorded Aquism, True True Loving, recorded Kunte Kinte, Can't Run From Jah. All that was done off the Ampex. Ampex really made a lot of great recordings. Oh, by then, Shaka had moved in upstairs. So Shaka had like the first floor upstairs where he was running his operation from his
room. No wonder the Shaka of those days was such a kind of potent force. If you've got like Shaka and you in the same building, so you've got the studio and all these musicians and like the sound system all kind of working together. That's quite a heady mix,
Up to now, you could say we shared a lot of tracks about. You could say a large portion of the tracks that were on the first, say, 5 Shaka albums were Ariwa tracks, and a lot of my tracks, he was involved in those tracks as well, I mean, he'd come down and sometimes he'd hear a tune and he'd say, boy, give him the bass, and he'd play bass on a couple of tracks, So it was quite a cohesive mixture, because you have to remember also Shaka was a bit like Dennis. He took over from Dennis in a sense where he knew everybody in the business. And I knew very little people in the business. Like he'd have sessions and sometimes like Mikey Campbell or Aswood and people like Twinkle would come down and different people, I mean, he knew everybody in the business, So the studio got accepted because when people come and they hear the studio, because there weren't many studios around.
You said that you'd had, the tip of the iceberg of selling a few thousand to things like really going off. So when did things start to really take off in terms of like bigger sales? Because there were some quite big hits.
Just coming to that, because we just tweaked up the studio. We tweaked up the studio, changed the reverb, changed the delay, got the meters to work, and got everything tested. And I got a drum machine, and we started to lay. And I started to lay. I thought, let me lay some cover songs. And I laid about 4 songs. that day. And I played the songs to every singer that I knew. I played it to loads of people. And nobody wanted to sing any of those songs.
So what was the reason?
I think even though we were making sellers, we weren't making no big hits. And one of the tracks I laid was a track, in fact, I laid 2 stylistics covers, Country Living, and I laid If I Love You, because I really loved that first album. I thought that album was fantastic. That was the album with You Are Everything and Point to No Return. Every track on that album was a hit, you know. And I thought, right, country. I played it to Sandra Cross, played to Sister Audrey, played to a couple of good male singers I knew. Everybody said no. And I thought, shit, this is disappointing. Who could I get to sing these songs? So then I went to Sandra Cross. She said, nah, man, it's going to be just like the others. You just sell a few hundred and then disappear. So I said, all right, Sandra, listen. I'll pay you £100. Come and sing the song for me. She said, all right, pick me up at my flat. Went wrong by her. Put her in my Datsun. Zoom rung by the studio. She put on a lead voice, 2 harmony. Paid her £100. Went away. This time, I got stealing, put on some lead guitar, put on some more backing vocal, 24-track song, Chris. Then the week before, between me, Sid, and Lee Perry, we just mixed a bunch of stuff for Lee Perry, including Chris Blackwell is a vampire and all kind of thing that he had voiced, you know. And at that time, when we were mixing, funny enough, Lee said to me, run me a mix. He said, Sid, make him mix, and I'll mix. Or I thought it was mixing. Then Lee say, I was in front of the desk like I am now. Lee was on the other side of the desk listening to what I was doing. He said, nah, man, that's not mix. He said, come, get up, move. And he sat down in the chair. Said, what you listening to is wrong. And he showed me what I was doing wrong. He said, you want to make hits? Print that. And one pass. Zing, 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 zing. So yeah, run that. And I run that. And then, so the next week now, when I finished Country Living, I thought, let me try this. And I tried the different balance, using what I learned from scratch. And I got used to it. I thought, right. The year turned, and I pressed the record. And that record, I knew it was going to hit because I pressed 1,000. When I pressed 1,000 records, took it down to Jetstar. In fact, I took 500 to Jetstar. When I went to Dub Vendor said, give me 200. Normally they would take a 50. Said, give me 200. I swing back around 2 record shops. I take a stock. I only have 100 left out of 1,000. Fuck. By the time I reach the studio, bring, phone ring. Jetstar on the phone.
Okay.
Could I have another 1,000 of that song? Said, another 1,000? Said, you sure? Said, but you just had 500. Said, yeah, the finish. I said, finish? I thought someone's taking a piss. I don't want to burn my fingers by pressing wrong. So you sure? And Mr. Palmer always talking a quiet one. He said, Mr. Neil, could we have the records? When could we have the records? Tomorrow? I said, no, I've got to order them. So I called Bill. Because I stuck with the pressing plan. Stuck with Bill. Press 1,000. By the time I get next 1,000, go around Jetstar. Barely had enough money to pay for it. The vendor said, boy, could we have 500? I said, ranted. By the time I make some circulate, go body music, Don Christine Burnham. Yeah, Ariwa, we hear you have a tune there. Could we have 200? Blah, blah. Calls was coming through left, right, and center. I said, shit, I can't pay for the pressings. Good thing by then, me and Bill built up a nice relationship. Bill said, well, the boss is scared of pressing, of working with you lot, really, but I like working with you. So look, I'll press the records for you. Pay me at the end of the week. Pay me at the end of the month. And that's how I got credit, because all the reggae guys who came before fucked them up. So they were scared. And you know, right or wrong, when they see another black man coming pressing records, they just think, shit, can't take the chance. So I had to win them over. So anyhow, the record was going nice. Within 3-4 weeks, that record gone up to number 1. Moving Dennis Brown, Gregory Isaacs, Janet Kay, moving all them records and sitting at the top of the charts, right? The same week, right? My first son, Joe, was born, right?
Yeah, big up, Joe.
Yeah. Rodigan called me up. Rodigan said, Neil Fraser, you done it. He said, listen, man, my apologies. I took back everything I said. He said, I don't know how you done it, but you moved from a position of a non-runner. You're at the top of the charts, because country living, they couldn't keep up. That record was selling at a rate of 2,000 a week and more. He said, I took back everything, man, because by that time, I'd done a few other records. Audrey sung the other Stylistics record, If I Love You, that started to sell. And we had the formula by that time. We done Got to Find a Way, Lorna G, number 2. So we had Country Living, number 1. And Horse Move was coming up. By the time Country Living moved from the number 1 spot, we had Horse Move take the number 1 spot. So, you know.
I mean, things must have changed so much for you in that period, because if you've gone from like being a new guy and kind of not really being known to then just having number 1 after number 1, then with your own, especially with your own school of artists, it's not like, oh, I've gone and found Dennis Brown or Gregory or something. You know, you're working with Sandra Cross and like...
Sandra Cross,
you know,
was a new name. Wild Bunch. Wild Bunch featuring Sandra Cross. What me and other producers have learned from those times is that a lot of the artists, because the artists them were good, but they couldn't handle the success because we give them the success on a plate. They weren't ready.
It's funny because, like you say, it's on. You give them on a plate, But look at the sacrifices and the work that you had to do to make it all happen,
Right.
and to juggle. Because success is not an easy thing to handle, and you suddenly got to juggle pressing these records, and then you haven't got any money because you've pressed so many already. You haven't got the money back. Is that's kind of what I'm getting at, is that ability to
run a business.
know artists, produce music, do technical stuff in the studio, but run a business.
Run a business, and at the end of the day, there was this artist-producer battle that existed because the artists always felt that the producers were robbing them, right? And most of the time, the producers were doing all the work because we found the songs a lot of the time. Now and again, the artists would find the songs, but we created the conditions to record the songs. We pay the musicians, we pay the pressings, and up to that point, we give the artists the name, we give them the success. They would then go and earn from the tracks. We earn from the sales. And the pop market, who I worked with, people like Massive Attack and The Orb and Black Box and all these people, they would not give the artist any name, no credit. Soul to soul, never give the artist no credit. We were the fools, We give the artists their success on a plate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the producers in the background, really.
That's the mistake the reggae business did, including myself, including all the other producers like Sir Lloyd, Sir George, even Dennis Bovell, all Winston Edwards. We give the artists success on a plate.
And is this the kind of stuff that's going to be, you're going to deal with in your book? Because I know you're writing a book, and because I'm interested in just whether you call it like a business strategy or your kind of skills in these areas. It's like they're amazing and unique, and it's the sort of the mad professor approach to things, book, and like what you've learned from a career in it.
My book deals with everything because I'm in business and I'm still in business. I've been in business from 1980. I mean, at that time, don't forget, racism was always there. Racism was always there at any level. Whether or not you could blame the pressing plant for drawing their conclusions when another black guy come along saying he want to press records. But us, the second range of producers, we got the brunt. People like Jah Shaka, Sir Lloyd, Sir George, administrators, all those labels. We got the brunt of the damages caused by the first set of producers who didn't pay the bills, Because at that time also, I had like Pat Banton, first album, Mad Professor Captures Pat Banton, recording like 2 5-hour sessions, recording, boom, 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 to the top, selling like a single, same time as Country Living, selling as fast as some singles. That's when I realized this studio sounded like no other studio. And it wasn't easy for any English studio. The only other time, Easy Street had a little run with like Carol Thompson and people like Sugar Minott.
A long time ago, though. You're still sitting in the chair.
Easy Street, they had hits around 81, 82, but by 83 they had stopped. Gooseberry had hits around 79, 80, it didn't last that long. Our hit period started, proper hits, started 85 and it run, because once we found the song, we had a lot of people from Jamaica coming in to use the studio. We had people like Jermaine with Audrey Hall. We had John Holt. We had Dennis Brown. We did Gregory Isaacs. We did anybody who is anybody were coming to Gartree Road, Peckham, and the studio was busy. After a while, we didn't even get that much white clients anymore. We got a few. We got like the Orb, and we got like Restriction, and a lot of guys from Bristol, and like pre-Massive Attack days. But the reggae business found Ariwa, and all those who were running from it, they run towards it. By then, everybody thought, oh, we could build studios. And then we had few people came along and they tried building studios because they thought...
There's more to like going to the shop and buying stuff, isn't there?
As you could hear, even making records now, you could make, everybody could make a record. You could use whatever software there are and you make records. But could you make a record that could still be played in 30 years or 40 years? That's the difference. But the craft I had to learn from like 81 and things like where the signal go to and where it shouldn't go to. Those were important things. And you still have to learn.
Yeah, and it's creating a studio that's got like that's got its own blueprint, got its own sound. It's like you can tell an Ariwa track as soon as you hear it, and it's like that's what I've always strived for in what I do, is to try and have some kind of identity in it. So it's like I just want to do my thing. I don't want to do what everyone else does. I want to do my thing, and it's like those things are really important. And the more analog I think you do things. I do believe it's possible with digital if you know what you're doing. But the more analog you've got, the more you've got some kind of identity, I think.
Well, yeah, I mean, the digital world. The problem with the digital world, I think, is that whatever identity you could achieve, someone else could achieve.
Unless you're really deep into it on a level that other people aren't, maybe.
Yeah, but if they take time, they would get there, because everything digitally from you going to the digital world, it could be cloned. I mean, we've got things in the studio that are so individual. Sometimes it's frightening.
But we've been talking for quite a long time, and there's a couple of things I'd like to ask you about, because it's like you've got such a long career, and it's so hard to sort of fit it into one interview.
It's crazy.
And it's like the people listening to this podcast, a lot of them are fans of a certain style of kind of dub music, and they're sorry, you should ask Prof about this track or that track. And I asked you about this before a few years ago when we were somewhere at a festival. But one album that I'm kind of interested in is The Lost Scrolls of Moses, because it's quite different. And like we're talking about digital, and that has got, it's clearly like an analog dub album, but it's got a lot of digital futuristic stuff, the way I hear it. And I guess when I heard it, when it came out in the early 90s as well, really sounded far out. But it sounds a bit different to some of the other stuff. So I don't know if there's anything around that album that's kind of...
Lost Scrolls was recorded in Jamaica. I don't know if you know that.
Okay.
No, you never know that?
No, I've not even taken the time to look into it. I'm just kind of...
Lost Scrolls was recorded at Music Works, Gussie Clark. He moved from Slipe Road to Windsor Avenue. And I went in there when he just moved to Windsor Avenue, I saw him build Windsor Avenue. And I was like, boy, this is great. He built deliberate studio, knocked down an old house and built Windsor Avenue. And he had, whilst he was building the two proper rooms at Windsor Avenue, he had a little side room. And that was where we laid Lost Scrolls of Moses. I went Jamaica with Steele and Audrey, and well, we went around the Caribbean. We went Jamaica, we went Barbados, we went Trinidad, we went Guyana, and we're taking notes, and but we spent about a week. Kingston, then we went Ochi, and it was really nice, and we laid, and we laid all those tunes at Windsor Avenue Music Works, and was Sly on drums. Obia did the bass line. I think Steele did a couple of bass lines. And the horns were people like Niles and Winston. I think we did some with Dean Fraser. Yeah, it was a nice kind of dub album. And I mixed it.
Yeah, it's a great album.
I mixed it here, but when I mixed it here at Ariwa, I changed up the studio because I came back from Jamaica and I thought I'd build this room like a Jamaica room. So I thought, I really love the sound of Music Works and all those records. So I thought, yeah.
Yeah, in that time, like early 90s, there's some amazing stuff coming out of Jamaica, really, from the last golden period for me.
Yeah, I thought I'd build a studio like Gussie, like Music Works.
Because just for me, I was young and I was just discovering it and I was learning myself, and it kind of stuck out as something a bit different, but something really sort of super modern. And I kind of it's got a kind of special place in my heart just because of that, because I was growing up with it and learning about mixing myself. And there's this album that sounds really different. Yeah,
because I'm sure that's about the same time I think it's you might write a letter to us to do an apprenticeship or something at the Riwa.
Okay.
Yeah. I saw a letter just the other day in one of the files, because we keep
nice. You still got it. Great.
We keep everything here.
What an archive, man! That's amazing.
We keep everything here. We keep all our recordings, and if we can't find them straight, we keep all our letters. We keep all the letters of people who wanted to take us to court as well, and stuff like that.
That definitely wasn't me. I just wanted to come in and have a look at the studio and learn from the legend.
No, it definitely wasn't.
So what's left to do? I mean, for someone who's achieved so much and had such an amazing career, and like what's left of interest for you to do?
Like I said at the start of this interview, I still need to make a record that people accept. I still haven't done that. I need to make a record that people could play everywhere.
Nice.
Money don't interest me that way. But when I make such a record, I'm going to know that I've truly become an engineer.
Well, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, Prof, you've made so many. I mean, the list is endless. But I think it's good to be critical of your own work. It's good to not sit back and go, I've done it. I think it is good to have that, I've not done it yet. That's what keeps us going, I think.
I mean, I come in here every day and I don't have to. I could easily be at home and sit and watch Place in the Sun or something on TV. I love being at home. You've got a nice home. I've got Joan Kamal around the other parts of the studio, and I could leave them to it. But I still love going through the tapes and playing things and thinking, this is a good record, but that's a better record. Or I could listen and I could say, like I said to you before, the periods between 1985 and 1990 were the best periods, where everything on those tapes, I think, are magic. You know, the way the song kissed the tapes.
Well, listen, at the end of the podcast, what I do is I ask everyone this same question, which is what would you want written next to your name in my book of Dub? And like I say, every 2 weeks when I do a new podcast, it's getting bigger and bigger. Got loads of amazing names in there. A lot of the people you've spoken about, Dennis Pavel, Maccabee, and Sandra Cross, of course. What would you want written next to your name in the book of Dub, Mad Professor?
Method to the Madness.
Yeah, I from what I see, I agree. That's a great way of describing it from what I see.
Yeah, that's the title of my book, Method to the Madness.
Wicked. I'll have to come down and see you down there at some point in the future. I'd love to, just to, if that's all right.
Yeah, it's in the same place. It's a unique place. It's very special.
Thanks for joining me and Mad Professor for this 31st episode of the Life in Dub podcast. Don't forget to share the podcast and to help get these stories out to more and more people. Remember that if you want to get in touch, you can email me at vibronics@gmail.com, and don't forget there's 30 other episodes of the Life in Dub podcast ready for you to listen at lifeindub.com or wherever you get your podcasts. So thanks again for listening, and I'll see you all again in 2 weeks for the next Life in Dub podcast.